Good morning. If you received or will be receiving a stimulus check, there are plenty of things that you can do with that money. Fox 5 financial expert Chase Wilsey joining us now to explain the best ways to use it. Chase, good morning to you. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning. Great to be here.
All right, we're going to get right to this. First up, you're suggesting establishing an emergency fund. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, it's so important, and kind of what this pandemic has shown is how unprepared a lot of people are for these emergencies. It's kind of interesting. At the beginning of the year, Bankrate actually did a study, and just 41% of Americans at that time could cover an emergency that was about $1,000. So that's not even close to what I recommend. I say you need to have about 3 months of non-discretionary expenses. That includes things like rent, food, water, your car payment. You don't want to stop that because you'll get that repossessed, of course. You need to bake that in and understand what are those regular expenses that you can afford to live without, essentially, and bake that into a 3-month budget. That's how much you should have in savings. And this, stimulus check could help rebolster that savings account for you.
I tell you, budgeting and planning for the future, not a lot of people's strong suits, but hopefully this will teach some lessons here. Tip number 2, you pay off high interest debt. What's considered high interest nowadays, especially?
It's so important here. I mean, you got to realize that high interest debt, gosh, even if you think, I'm going to invest and do things like that, very hard to outpace, let's say, a credit card that can be as high as about 20%. Very high interest rate debt there. Also, there are some personal loans that can be quite expensive as well. Some student loans can be, 7-8% perhaps, depending on your credit. Make sure if it's, I generally say above 6, 7, 8%. Most of the time it makes sense to attack that debt rather than invest in, different equities or bonds or things of that nature.
Very, very good idea. Tip number 3, support local businesses. I think a lot of us have been trying to do that. What's the best way to do it, and why is it important overall?
It's so important. A lot of people don't realize that small businesses employ about half the population. And a lot of these small businesses are struggling immensely right now. We need to keep them afloat because, again, half the population, if they don't have a job to come back to, it's going to be hard to keep that community going. We need to make sure we're supporting those local businesses, and ways to support them. I mean, your local restaurants. I mean, I have my local favorites. I love Yanni's Bistro here in Scripps Ranch, OG's in Carmel Mountain. Just go there, order takeout if they're still open. There's some other local retailers as well, the mom and pop shops, that you want to try and support during times like this to give them cash flow so they're still around, when the reopening does happen.
And when you're a mom and pop, you're struggling just to do the stuff that the bigger names and the big chains are doing easily. It's really hard for them to do it at that level. You got to support them. Tip number 4, consider investing. What kind of investments are good right now?
Of course, with the pullback, I mean, we have seen things kind of come off quite strongly off the bottom there, but things are still inexpensive. You got to be careful here, though. I still like some good, strong equities, but you got to make sure you're not buying into the ones that are expensive. I mean, a company like Amazon, let's say, it's actually up quite high. Even during this pandemic. I don't like Amazon. I want to find something that's a good bargain at this time. And also, you got to make sure you avoid the companies that have high debt. The companies that are closed right now, they don't have any revenue coming in. They might miss their interest payments. We've seen a lot of retailers announce they might be going bankrupt. Avoid companies like that. Look for strong balance sheets. Look for good valuations. That's where you want to be investing at this time. There are still some great opportunities, even with the increase in the stock market.
I think just as important as knowing how to spend this money is how to avoid and where to not spend this money. Where should people kind of avoid using those stimulus checks?
Of course, you go out and buy, let's say, you don't have the emergency fund set up, you don't have, you do have high debt. You don't want to take that stimulus check, go out and buy, a new bed frame, a new piece of furniture. You have to make sure you have a plan with this stimulus check. Be smart with it. The government's trying to help us out here to make sure we can come back from this economic downturn and come back quite strongly. So again, have a plan with that stimulus check. Don't waste that money. And as I said, people like to shop on Amazon. Try and support local if you can.
Excellent, excellent tips. Chase Wilsey, we thank you so much once again for your expertise. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Raoul.
Time now for